The control container function gives us a lot of different functionality, and we can use this on individual containers or a group of containers if we wish. So to begin, I'm just going to drag a main group down here, and I'm just going to rename this group to main. And I'm going to go back and grab some type of object, and I'm going to actually use an object that we created already. So in an earlier tutorial we created this globe, and I'm just going to use this here. I'm going to go back into my built-ins, into my control folder, and grab this control container and drag it onto my globe container. I'm going to click to go into our control container function. Now again, the first thing that we have is the field identifier. It is our first control function in the scene tree, so I'm going to leave this field identifier at 1. The description picked it up from the container. It's called globe, so I'm just going to leave it as globe. Now we have a lot of different options in here. First thing that we have is expose visibility, which is off by default. Now we can turn this on, and this will give the graphics operator the ability to turn this visibility on and off. We also have expose object, so we can turn this on, and now this will allow the graphic operator to swap out objects from within the database. So this will allow the operator to swap out objects from within our database. We also have expose position, and we can expose each individual position. So if we only want the X position or the Y position or the Z position, we can turn these on individually. And when we do that, we have the option here to set a minimum X position and a maximum X position. Also a minimum Y position and a maximum Y position. Same thing with the Z position. It gives us a minimum point and a maximum point that we could set in here. I'm just going to leave these as default. Now further below, there's also a position stop keyframe. So if we have an animation on this particular globe object, we can set the keyframe name in here and adjust that keyframe. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm just going to create a quick animation here on the X position. So I'm going to set a keyframe on the left side, and we're just going to move it to the right side here and set another keyframe. I'm going to go into the stage, and here's my keyframe. And I can set this pretty much wherever I want, so I'm just going to drag it to where I want. I'm going to click on the second keyframe, and I'm actually going to give it a name. So I'm just going to call it S1. You can call it anything you want. S1 is fairly easy to remember, so I'm just going to come back into my control container function here, and I'm going to type in where it says position stop keyframe. I'm just going to say S1. Now we also have the ability to expose the X rotation, the Y rotation, and the Z rotation. And as we turn these on, it also gives us our minimum X rotation and a maximum X rotation. So we could set these here. Same thing for the Y rotation. So when we turn this on, it also gives us the variables to set a minimum and a maximum Y rotation. And the same with the expose Z rotation. So we can turn this on and gives us a minimum and maximum range as well. Also, there's a rotation stop keyframe. So if we had animated our globe and named the keyframe, it would give us the ability to adjust that keyframe. Now we also have below an expose X scaling, expose Y scaling, expose Z scaling. And I'm just going to turn one of these on this time instead of all three of them. And this will just allow us to only expose the X scaling. And again, we have a scaling stop keyframe. So I'm going to save this scene, and we're going to take it into Trio and see all these different options here that we turned on. So once in Trio, I'm going to go to my import scenes, and I'm going to navigate to where I saved my scene at. And here's my control container, so I'm just going to import it. I can do it several ways. I can highlight it and click the import button, or I could double click on it, or I could click on it and drag it left. So choose whichever way you wish to import the scene. I'm going to go back into the scene here, and when I double click on it, down here in the tab fields we have several different options. So as I click the tab button, we can come down and navigate through each one of these. And as I navigate through, you can see what it tells you. It says active, geom, position, rotation, scaling. Now in the editing window in the upper right, we have the same thing. So if you put your mouse over these, it tells you exactly what each one of these is. Now the first thing that we have here is our selection mode. So I can navigate here or click on this, and it gives us our database. So I can come in here and navigate to our objects folder, and here's the globe that we had. So if I wanted to swap out the globe for something else, let's say maybe this football helmet, we could do that. Now we have a position here, so I can adjust the position. So I have a Y position, a Z position, and here you see the X position. And we also had an animation on it. So when I hit play, it animates. Now if we wanted to adjust that keyframe of where it lands, we could just come in here to the X position and move this left or wherever we want it to land. And when we hit play, this is where that animation is now going to stop. So that's how you adjust that keyframe. We also put a rotation on it, so we can click on the rotation, and here we have the X and the Y and the Z rotation of it as well. We also gave the ability to scale it. So we only gave them the X scaling, but you can still see that it gives us the option for single, locked, and proportional. Now we can do it either way that we want. If we just want to do it on the X, or if you want to do it on the lock, you can see that it's still adjusted on the X because we only exposed the X position. So it doesn't matter if our options are set to single, locked, or proportion, because we only have one scaling factor here, it's only going to move it on that X scale. We also gave it the ability to turn it on or off. So this is what this little eyeball does right here. We can turn it off to make it invisible, or turn it on to make it visible. Now if we jump back into Artist, one other thing about the control container is that you don't just need it to use it on individual containers. So if we just drag a series of groups down here, we could also use this control container on this group. So now we can set the variables for this control container function on this group as opposed to just individual containers.